Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about the My Hero Academia chapter 319 spoilers. Hey everyone, so you know the drill. I'm going to give you the summaries, can't show the pictures just in case because sometimes the copyright strikes come quick and hard, so we're going to be very careful with that. Anyway, for chapter 319, it's titled Friend, and it's a cool chapter. Last time Bakugo showed up, there was a Bakugo is Toga theory, but thankfully that is not the case. In this chapter, what we're seeing is majority is a flashback that tells a story of how the kids got there, and at the end we end up seeing that all of Class 1A showed up. So everyone's there. They're going to be going after Izuku. Now, what I was really happy to see was that Izuku is ultimately trying to run away, and that makes sense because Izuku is not just going to learn. I mean, if All Might can't talk to Izuku, then what people showing up, what's that going to do for him? But no, the whole class showed up. It looks like they were willing to beat up Izuku to bring him back home or do something with him. It's unclear whether or not they're going to go with him or if they're just going to try and drag him back. Right now, it's like leaning more towards dragging back. But this is really cool. I think maybe back when this all started, back when Izuku first left, maybe like I was thinking that we could still have everyone coming after him to grab him. But you know, as time went on, I went more towards hoping it would just be a smaller group, but it's actually pretty cool to see everyone showing up there. Now, one thing that happens in the chapter is that they have to spend quite a bit of time justifying why some of the no-names are, or not the no-names, but some of the lower people in the class are there too, and that's why the chapter spends a chunk of time there. And there are some other justifications when you look at the current translation that we have for it, which are really interesting, but I am very curious to see what they ultimately look like in the final translation, because the fan translation is sometimes incorrect, so you got to be very careful with that. But that said, we do appreciate the fan translation for anyone that does put it up, and I will have the link to the Tumblr blog that did translations for this one down below as well. Alright, cool. So with that out of the way, that was general talk. Let's talk about the spoilers. We'll go with Atsushi's summary first. So the chapter starts with a flashback from a few days after Izuku left UA. Bakugo is ripping the letter. Shoto and Tokoyami are next to him. They say it's only a guess, but they think Izuku's with Endeavor and the other pro heroes. Ida asks why they don't just call the pro heroes to confirm the guess since they have their mentors, but the three of them say Endeavor, Hawks, and Genus are not picking up their phones. Specifically in that scene, Tokoyami is talking about Hawks. Genus is being talked about by Bakugo, and I think Bakugo calls him like a walking pair of denim pants. And Endeavor is Shoto, right? So Shoto says he understands they must be extra busy right now, but it's fishy nonetheless. They're definitely hiding something. You then have Jiro saying that All Might hasn't come back to UA either, and you have Ojiro saying that their classes have been suspended. They're still waiting to advance to the next school year, and that the hero course is now basically standing at standby in the dorms and patrolling the area around UA. So I have a little bit more information for that little spot there. For the whole thing with the UA, Ojiro tells us specifically that they are just there as defense for the immediate surroundings. So pretty much they're a stationary force. In this moment, Ojiro also mentions that they can't get detailed info about the situation outside, which is what justifies why they haven't gone on their own, right? Like if they're being locked here, they probably aren't hearing the stories about Izuku, so that's probably why they didn't track him down by themselves earlier. Now it is interesting that they haven't tried to leave by themselves before getting permission, but we'll talk about that in a quick second. Bakugo says that if Izuku's afraid of going back to UA and attracting the villains there, then there's no way he would come back just to leave the letters, which was interesting because it tells us, okay, so Izuku was never at UA for any given point in time. Bakugo then goes into a whole rationalization part where he says that Izuku asked someone to do it and it was probably All Might, and Bakugo then says that he knows Izuku and All Might better than Endeavor does, and he knows that the two of them will eventually get themselves into trouble. So there's a few more details here. First, when it comes to the rationalization, Bakugo specifically says there was no one else but All Might that could leave the letters. That rationalization, so far from what I'm seeing in the fan translation, seems to be there just to kind of speed the plot along, because like it depends. If the final translation comes out and says that there is no one else but All Might that could have done it, that's too much of a generalization, because there are many other ways to get those letters back to UA without All Might having to actually go into UA. But that might just be the specificity of the lines. It's just really interesting to see that there. Now, when Bakugo is talking about Izuku and All Might, Bakugo specifically says that Izuku and All Might coming together was the worst possible thing that could have happened, and that's why he says he knows those two better than the heroes do. And so with that line, he's indicating they really should not have done that particular movement Anyway, we then have Class A deciding that they're going to contact Endeavor, but they don't really know how to, so Ochako remembers that he's an UA alumni, and a few days later we have Nedzu calling Endeavor to the principal's office where all the students are waiting. So, this line, there's again some extra little details. So, first off, Kirishima had a line where he was getting fired up about trying to find a way to talk to Endeavor, and then that's where you have Uraraka coming in and saying like, well, he's a UA alumni. What happened here is that this led the kids into telling Nedzu their plan, and this led Nedzu into wanting to trick Endeavor. And Nedzu had a pretty cool line where he says that he adapts to the situation. So what happened was Nedzu called Endeavor in, he set up the ambush, and his basis on it being that, yeah, you know, when we first agreed to this, we had a different set of information, but now the situation has changed. So that's what's ultimately occurring with the Nedzu scene. The kids didn't just ambush Endeavor when he was having a meeting with Nedzu. It was full on, he was working together with the kids. Now, after that, we go into the Shoto drama. Shoto tells his father to explain why he's been ignoring his calls and texts. He asks if they forgot their talk about Toya, to which Endeavor responds that he didn't and that those words have been guiding him ever since. Shoto makes a quip about, and then Shoto blames him for letting Izuku and All Might go by themselves, and this is where Bakugo intervenes, and Bakugo goes in saying that he thinks what Endeavor did was mostly right, but he didn't calculate Izuku's disposition correctly. And Bakugo goes into this whole thing about how Izuku is self-sacrificial, he's screwed up in the head, and never thinks about his own good. And since All Might used to be that way too during his time as Symbol Peace, he's unable to stop Deku. He says that those two cannot stay together right now. And then there's a short flashback of the pros receiving the news that Izuku said he didn't need All Might's help anymore. And then specifically, Hawks is the one that says that he wishes they were fast enough to follow him around. The speed thing is important just because Hawks' character is centered around speed. That's why he's using that kind of rhetoric. So after that, Endeavor pulls the phone out of his pocket and Zero interrupts him asking if it has a GPS feature. So Endeavor doesn't answer verbally, but he threw his phone to them while Zero caught the phone together with Mineta. So that scene in particular looks really odd, just from the images that I've seen so far. Like, I'm looking at them again, and there isn't a really solid transition there. It's just Endeavor having the phone, and then it looks like it's just hit out of his hand by someone else, because the phone's all the way behind Endeavor when they're all grabbing it. Now, here's one of the scenes that was interesting, because like the people that went after the phone were Hagakure, Mineta, Zero, and Koda. Of those four people, Mineta's the one that actually has the most relationship with Izuku. So it was odd to see them there. Them going after it was just a sign of saying like, oh yeah, you know, they care about him, right? That's what this chapter is there to do, is really say, yes, everyone is in on this. And that's why you had pretty much no names coming in to grab the phone. And them diving for the phone is just to show, okay, like they're very... They really like Izuku. Zero asked whether it's okay for him to borrow the phone or not, since he was just someone who happened to be in the same class as Izuku. Koda said that he was also just someone who spent a year in the same class, and then Shoto continued by saying that he was shocked, disappointed, because Izuku didn't share his troubles regarding One for All with them. And then Ida continues by saying that Class A will follow him because no matter how big of a deal All for One is, Midoriya is their friend, and they can't smile while knowing their friend is walking a thorny road. And I believe thorny road, that might be a narrative reference, because All for One also called that road thorny. Now, one thing to keep in mind here when you're looking at the images is that Shoto and Ida have some pretty strong shots here. Anyway, after that, we have a part that wasn't covered here. That being Endeavor is saying that he doesn't want to let the kids go outside, and Nedzu makes a comment about how much Endeavor has grown up. I believe that's who he's talking to. Anyway, Nedzu tells them it's okay to bring back Izuku. He then explains that he was agreeing to Izuku's own will to not return. However, the moment that they agreed to accept him to UA, he became the student that they have to protect. Endeavor asks about the refugees, and Nedzu explains that UA is currently letting them stay, but it's still not the official evacuation area, and he will do something about it. So that's really interesting that UA is not an evacuation zone, because UA has one of the best defenses. Now, I think when you look at this summary, I think there's an issue here. Because the summary is saying, but it's still not the official evacuation area. Someone else's translation says, we didn't accept becoming a designated evacuation center only because of how large our school grounds are. But it was also because the security system we strengthened in preparation for the cultural festival, but never did use the UA barrier in its true value. So let's look at the summary here. Nedzu says it'll be okay because All Might and the previous predecessor also went to UA. So that's a little bit of a questionable line there. So let's go back on this because the summary is there's a little bit of an issue here. Ultimately, what Nedzu is saying is that they are an evacuation zone, both because they have a large campus and because they have the UA barrier that they haven't been able to use yet. And Nedzu is talking about it possibly having true value, right? So keep that in mind. One of these two is incorrect. I think it's more likely to be Atsushi's summary that's incorrect because this has happened before. Anyway, with that, we also have Nedzu saying to bring back Izuku by their own hands, please. And it's just ultimately what's important to take away from all of this is that Nedzu pretty much said, yes, you guys were gonna team up. I'm okay with Izuku leaving the school, but he's not actually expelled, right? So this is just really important. It's gonna be good when we get everything in proper writing on the official translations. Anyway, the next panel was when the rest of the class arrived in Kamino, and Momo announces that Dictator was successfully captured. Now, with regards to that, we do have an image. What happens is that Shoto captures him in ice, and Momo puts on those restraining pads that they've used on Nomu before on Dictator. Momo says good job to Bakugo, and then Bakugo yells at her for not using his proper name, to which Momo apologizes. And then the citizens that were freed from Dictator's control, they pretty much run away once they notice all the kids are there. Izuku asks them why they're there, and Uraraka said because they were worried about Izuku. Izuku says that he's fine, so they shouldn't worry and just leave. And then you go into like hardcore sassy Bakugo. He's like, honestly, Bakugo was bringing in so much nuance for the chapter. I'm very excited to see it. But yeah, Bakugo claps his hands and smiles sarcastically, saying that's great, as expected from the One for All predecessor. And then he proceeded to ask him seriously, so you think can you smile now? Izuku stayed silent and said, in order to smile and to make everyone feel at ease, I need to go. Izuku activated his quirk and told everyone to move away, to which Bakugo answered, then make us move. And then he calls him the All Might wannabe, and then we have Ida and Uraraka. They're ready to fight. So Bakugo looks really good in the images. And one thing that was really interesting was that Ida was tapping on Bakugo's back. So in the image, that's going to be pretty neat to see. Now, Ida has some interesting lines at the end. He says, we understand that Izuku will not change his stance. Everyone, we're doing this. So pretty much, it looks like Ida is officially the one leading the class, which makes sense. He's the president. And then you just have Ochako saying, yeah, to agree with him. So, you know, when you look at it, Ochako doesn't really have that much of a strong presence aside from leading the charge on ambushing Endeavor. But, you know, take what you can get at this point. Overall, it seems pretty cool. There's one thing that I am really questioning with Izuku, and that does Izuku realize that these people are going to be putting themselves in danger when they go to work? Like, heroes have been dying to villains since the hero system started. Heroes die. Midnight died. Like, these people, like, I understand wanting to keep them at peace, but at the same time, it's being a hero automatically puts you in a certain level of danger. I understand, like, what Izuku's probably thinking is that he wants to keep them specifically away from this danger, right? That's what he's looking at, but ultimately, this argument is going to be really short-sighted, because, like, at some point, one of them must be smart enough to be able to tell them, like, we're heroes. We know the situation that we involved ourselves in. Just because you're dealing with All for One doesn't mean All for One won't let loose some Nomu to attack UA or something like that, right? All for One has a lot of resources, and as again, it's not like, you know, it's just really odd. He wants to do this all by himself, but that's just, what's he gonna do in the future when everyone's out doing their own dangerous thing and the next new big villain pops up, right? I hope that Bakugo actually comes in and tries to beat Izuku's rhetoric here, because I think Bakugo does have a few spots where he can really go into it. Mind you, again, it's nuanced, but Bakugo's been showing some nuance here. Overall, with the spoilers, they're pretty solid. They're pretty much just a setup chapter for, hey, we're gonna beat up Izuku. And ultimately, I'm really happy. Like, I was thinking Izuku was going to run away. So I'm happy to see he's actually going to try. Now, are they going to win? Are they going to be able to stop Izuku? I don't think they are going to be able to. I don't know what the author will have to do to justify Izuku getting away. But I see them losing to Izuku. Or you know, not maybe not a loss, but maybe Izuku's just able to get away, which is technically his victory, right? But we'll have to see, because Izuku's pretty run ragged. The problem here is that Izuku knows everyone's weaknesses. So that can be legitimately scary, while everyone else doesn't know Izuku's new quirks properly. Mind you, like, Izuku right now is a bundle of weakness, but you'd never really know a cornered rat can do a lot when it's really scared. Anyway, everyone, let me know what you thought of the spoilers down below. We'll come back on Sunday to do a proper walkthrough, but till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.